Good morning, and welcome to the June 18th Public Infrastructure Meeting. I'm going to call this meeting to order. My name is Councilwoman Sylvia Ortiz. I'm the chair, and if my colleagues would introduce themselves, I'd be happy.
David Banks, Councilman, District 4.
Neil Dobler, District 7.
Okay. I'm going to come off the script just a little bit because I'm really excited about something. So I would like Braxton and your crew to stand. Everybody that made it possible for the 29th and Topeka Boulevard. If you are a part of that, I want you to stand so we can give you a big round of applause. You guys were done 2 days early, is that correct, Braxton?
Yes, ma'am. That is correct.
All right, you deserve some kudos. So if you had a part of that, please stand. Don't be shy. Is there nobody here besides Braxton?
No, our project manager and inspector.
I represent the corner of that district, and you have made my life worth living for. I tell you that. Again, Braxton, thank you. I don't know how you did it, but keep pouring that magic over there, okay?
Yep, I will pass along your thanks to the people that actually deserve it, the project manager and the contractor.
Yep, they do. But I have come to realize being in this committee, we've got some hardworking people that might not always get the thank yous, and I wanted to send that out to them. Okay, approval of the June 12th minutes. Motion to approve. Second. It's been moved to second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. 3-0. Okay. Action item, CIP. Is that you, Braxton?
Yes, ma'am, that would be me.
Okay.
Specifically, we're asking for approval of a project in excess of $250,000. The Oakland neighborhood was one of the 2 neighborhoods identified for infill sidewalk under the pedestrian master plan for this year. Specifically, the area near the State Street Elementary School and the Chase Middle School. And so we have approximately $340,000 of sidewalks that will be constructed. And these are in the 500, 600, and 700 blocks of Ohio, Sumner, Poplar, Green, Chester, Wabash, and Forest. And we do it on Vince manages that program, and he goes out and inspects every one of those segments, and we only replace the sections that need to be replaced, or if we're missing sidewalk, to add infill sidewalk in there. And with that, I will ask for approval and stand for any questions that you have.
Are there any questions?
Move approval.
It's been moved. Second. All those in favor, right hand, please. Okay, 3-0. Awesome. B, TPAC upgrades.
Yes, Deputy Director Tryon will lead the presentation on this. There was a PowerPoint that was part of it. 2 weeks ago at the City Council meeting, there were a number of questions that came up relative to the City Hall TPAC HVAC project, as well as there were questions about the stairs and lighting, as well as the project that we have in design. And so Jason has put together a very comprehensive PowerPoint presentation to walk you through the issues and to get you updated.
So what we're going to start with today is just a generic update on where we are with the City Hall and TPAC renovation project, and then we'll talk about some specific issues that were brought up at the last council meeting. And then the last thing we'll touch on are the proposed recommendations for the renovations that will be part of the new CIP project to support TPAC directly, and we have some representatives from TPAC here that can answer any questions about what they're requesting to do with those funds. There we go. So just an overview of the City Hall TPAC renovation project. So this project started with an analysis of all the different systems that work at the City Hall and TPAC buildings to provide HVAC. In total, there were 10 different systems that operate those 2 buildings. The initial approval that we received from this body was to replace all systems with the exception of 4, the fitness room, 2nd floor courtroom, 1st floor courtroom, and the 2nd floor offices. We proceeded along that scope of work. which would involve cutting shafts within City Hall from the basement to the third floor, ceiling demolition to expose the ductwork, converting the boiler from steam to hot water, new air handling units, and then new VAV boxes throughout the building. So after we began the design phase of the work, we had 2 additional systems that failed. So we came back before the governing body and requested approval to add those 2 systems to the scope of work, which raised the project budget to over $21 million. So those were the second floor courtroom HVAC systems, which also keep the council chambers nice and comfortable when you're meeting in council, and then also the offices on the second floor adjacent to the council chambers and courtroom. After we began the project and further design work was done, and we actually went out to bid for the separate systems, we requested additional approval because we were able to add all of the systems into the renovation project while still completing the project under the original budget. So that is what we are working on now. Obviously, by including all of those systems, it provides benefit of being able to remove all of the steam lines in the buildings. Those steam lines are a constant headache to cause humidity because those run underneath TPAC. There's condensation that builds up on them. We have leaks, et cetera, and that causes some humidity and mold issues in the basement. But now that we are able to completely remove those steam lines from the building and run off a hot water system, we should no longer have those issues in the future. So some additional issues that were going to be addressed through this renovation. Obviously, when you're doing an HVAC project, the old radiators are there. As we remove those radiators, there's some additional renovation work that has to be done. For example, if you're pulling out those radiators, you have to do some repairs to the ceilings, walls, and carpet in some of those areas. We also wanted to address a couple of other issues that were necessary to improve at City Hall. There was a server room in the basement that was no longer necessary. Because we've been able to consolidate most of our servers, take some of them off-prem. That way we do not need that room, and the very expensive equipment that was keeping that room cooling was no longer necessary. So we were able to remove that server room. Also, an additional issue was that the third floor executive conference room was not ADA compliant, so that room actually served as the council chambers at one point, and there was a raised dais. At some point, the room was added to a different height than the rest of the floor, and a small ramp was installed. But did not meet current ADA standards for the slope of the ramp and also the appropriate landings. So that meeting was not considered ADA, that room was not considered ADA compliant, which we wanted to address. We also had the issue of, as we were completing the demolition of the ceilings for this HVAC project, we would expose the plaster ceilings and the moldings and trim work that was present in City Hall, but had been covered at some point by a drop ceiling. So throughout this project, we've been trying to make sure that we maximize the benefit of historic tax credits. Through that process, we want to restore as much of the historic character to the building as we can cost effectively in order to maintain that structure as part of the historic registry. So this was the original schedule. The original schedule was going to transition from phase 1 to phase 2 in January of 2024. We had multiple delays that were incurred from the original schedule, and we are actually transitioning to phase 2 as we speak. So the first phase was in City Hall, working on the basement and the third floor, and then transitioning from the first and second floor. We are completing the moves right now as we speak. There's people with some moving boxes over at City Hall going from the first floor into the basement. We expect to have all of those moves completed today, and then we can begin demolition on the first and second floor of City Hall. So how did we go from January 2024 to now we're only completing those moves in June of 2024? The primary issue was abatement. So as we did initial testing on the building to determine if there were any hazardous materials, we tested walls, we tested ceilings, but obviously when you get into abatement, you can't test everything. So once you start demolition, that's when you expose additional insulation around steam pipes, you expose other forms of glue that may have been used that you didn't see when you did your initial exploratory testing. You also find things like joint compound. Anytime you uncover some of those materials, you have to have them additionally tested. And while that's happening, you can't do work in that area. So unfortunately, we did find several areas where we found tile that we did not expect to find that contained asbestos. Also pipe insulation that was a different material than we had originally tested. And when you have that happen, you have to stop work, get the testing, wait for the results, allow a qualified contractor to come in, remove those materials safely, and while that's happening, no work can be done in that area. Unfortunately, because of all the additional hazardous materials, the project pushed from work that should have been completed prior to last winter, then extended into the winter months. That delay caused significant issues because the steam pipes that were scheduled to be demolished throughout the building now had steam flowing through them, which makes them very difficult to work with. And unfortunately, we didn't have the isolation necessary to heat the areas of the building that needed heated while still allowing the steam pipes to be worked on. We also had some roof openings that were planned as part of the project. That work was delayed until we could safely do that without exposing the building to the elements. Then the finishes underneath those roof hatches had to wait as well, because obviously you don't want to do new finishes under an area that you will have to expose to the elements at a later time. Some other additional delays that took place: we had delays in structural steels. We also had some delays in mechanical equipment. We also discovered that there were 4 layers of roofing on the roof of City Hall that all required replacement. They were all wet when we uncovered them, so all 4 layers needed to be removed. We found some areas where there were some pipes that had been leaking behind the walls that had previously gone undetected that we had to repair. Then we also had to reroute some sewer lines, some backflow preventers, install additional isolation valves so we can better control the water flow throughout the building. And we also had an issue of discovering some non-plenum rated cabling that was in the return air plenum that either had to be relocated or replaced with plenum rated cabling. So how do we make sure we won't have additional delays throughout the project? So just speaking on the City Hall side, we closed the first 2 floors. Now we're moving right now into the second 2 floors. You would think the project's about 50% complete. In reality, it's about 70% complete because the roof work is behind us. We've made sure that those shafts have been cut from the basement through to the 3rd floor. And also now we have the boiler conversion complete. There is no more structural steel, so we shouldn't have any delays there. And all the mechanical equipment for the remainder of the project is now on site, so we should not have any future delays with equipment. So for the phase 2 schedule, as I mentioned, we're in the process right now of moving individuals off of the 1st floor. Then we can begin demolition on the 2nd floor and the 1st floor, and then abating any hazardous materials that are uncovered as part of that demolition. We are anticipating that we'll be able to reopen City Hall likely in November. So what you're seeing there is the work will continue through early to mid-October, and then we'll be relocating staff, assuming no future delays, in November of this year. On the TPAC side of the building, so far what we've just been talking about is City Hall, but obviously the systems cover City Hall and the TPAC side of the building. We started construction in TPAC in January 2024 with demolition of one of the penthouse air handling units that has now been complete. So we have 1 air handling unit completely replaced. The work is expected to continue all the way through May of 2025. So there are several different systems. We're going to be working 1 system at a time or 1 area of the building at a time. The current work is happening in the basement. We anticipate that will continue into this fall, and then we can move up into the 1st floor later this fall, through then construction into 2025, moving on to the 2nd floor areas, the courtrooms. Not pictured on this because we're getting farther out in the calendar, was a little too hard to read when we included the entire project, but the last phases of work that we would be doing would be the 1st floor offices, both the TPAC offices and the courtrooms, which will continue into May of 2025 as our expected completion. So just an update on the lighting issues that we had recently after one of the council meetings. So we have a timer that operates the lights at City Hall. Unfortunately, there was an issue with that timer connection that caused none of the lighting on the exterior of the building to be working on May 21st. We have corrected that issue, so now the timer is working properly and the lights are coming on at night. We installed some additional lighting along the east walkway exiting City Hall, exiting the municipal courtroom. And then we have the exterior lighting. We're still troubleshooting some issues. That lighting was converted to LED last spring. We currently have 4 lights that are not operating properly that we're working with the manufacturer to get those replaced under warranty. We've installed a temporary solution on those lights, but unfortunately they flicker and burn out quite rapidly because we're using a bulb that isn't meant for how that light works after it had been converted. So we'll get those all completely replaced to make sure that all of the lights are working properly as intended around the building. So the next issue that we wanted to cover is we've discussed that we would have a ramp that would exit the municipal courtroom heading east. So currently there is only one ADA path as you exit the municipal court area. That goes to the west of the building and is a rather long walkway for those who need ADA accessible entrance. What we are proposing to do, and it's currently in design, would be adding a ramp on the east side of the building. There is quite a bit of slope to deal with, so as you can see, the design involves a very long path that would have to switch back along the east side of the building and then terminate on Monroe, where we would add some additional ADA accessible parking spaces on Monroe so that we would have a shorter route for those needing ADA access both to municipal court and to TPAC. We have a few different options we're working on, including ones that would include pedestrian lighting and handrails. We'll work through that, and then as we get final design, we'll bring that back before this body with options as how we would bid that out, what the estimated costs are, and what alternates that we would be pursuing. An additional issue that came up recently was, as we know, there are some defects with the steps in front of the TPAC and municipal court area, specifically the landing between the two granite stairways. So as you exit TPAC or municipal court, there's two sets of stairs with a landing in between. We had that landing replaced in 2020. The total cost of that project was $281,619. That was to remove and replace that limestone, the buttresses, reset the flagstone paving, repair, seal, and replace. The original project was $178,800 and continued to go up in cost throughout the project. As we changed the spec of the limestone being used, we infilled voids, we reset some of the granite steps, and then added sealant repair and salt guard to increase the total cost of that project. And those steps are considered part of the historic character of the building. So any changes to the materials would need to go through the process of having an application through the State Historical Preservation Organization. So as we started noticing defects and failures in those stone landings, we requested the original contractor who had done that work to come back and provide an estimate to repair those steps. Their recommendation was to completely remove all of the stone and then reset that setting bed. The cost that they gave for that was $48,800, and there were several items that were not included in their estimate. Also, as a part of that estimate, they informed us that there would be no warranty offered if we used any sort of ice melt material on that landing. We do use an environmentally friendly ice melt, but it is not practical, given the traffic in that area, not to apply some sort of protection because there are so many people that are using those steps. We didn't feel comfortable saying that we would not treat them with some sort of ice melt. So after getting that estimate and understanding that there would be additional costs as part of that project, we went through a competitive bid process. Unfortunately, at the end of that project, no bids were received. So our current options right now are we continue to try and find contractors that are willing to come in and make repairs to those steps. With our hope is not to go to a complete replacement of that landing. But as of right now, we have not been able to locate a contractor who's willing to provide a price to make a repair to those steps. The other option that we do have would be to request that we use an alternate material, which would have to be approved by the State Historical Preservation Organization, that they would verify that that doesn't change the historic nature of the building so much that it would be removed from the historic registry. Something like a stamped concrete would obviously be much lower cost and easier to maintain, but that would not be historically consistent with the construction of the building. So those are the options we're currently exploring, but haven't made any final decision yet. And then the last item that we wanted to discuss today was, so as part of the last CIP process, some funds were approved specifically for the benefit of TPAC, and they are ready now to recommend what they will spend those initial dollars with. So I've worked with them and with our contractor that's currently working on the renovations at City Hall to provide some cost estimates for what those funds would be used for, and we're seeking a recommendation to the governing body to approve those funds be used. So the initial item would be the marquee above or on the front entrance to TPAC, which we've included the price for that in the documents for today's meeting. There's also some additional requests that were made in the basement, some upgraded lighting, speakers, and controls so that they can increase the types of events that they host in the Hills Room. Also some changes to what are known as the black and green rooms, the Hussey Black Box and Nunemaker Dance Studio. So those are rooms in the basement that currently have a wall separating them. What they're proposing would be to remove that wall, make the space more rentable to different size parties, and also add upgraded RGB, red, green, and blue lighting so that they could do different types of lighting in that space and have it dimmable so they could host different types of events, whether it be weddings, comedy, performers, etc. And then some additional upgrades on the first floor, including some lobby box office locations, which would be some climate-controlled booths to improve security as people enter the building. Also upgraded power in the Promenade Hall. Currently, as vendors are serving in that space, there's very limited space. You could have a vendor selling additional items in the hallway when they have events. And then also adding some upgrades to the east meeting rooms, including a bar in the Fleming Room and some upgraded finishes to create a VIP space. And we have some representatives here from TPAC if you have any questions as far as what those improvements will do for them and their ability to rent the space and to continue to operate that facility. I would defer to them. But these are the total costs for that project. So what we'd be proposing would be that upon approval, we would work with our existing contractor in the building to add these finishes and upgrades to add a contract amendment to our current work. The benefit of that is we would have significantly reduced costs. We don't have mobilization. We don't have general conditions because we already have a contractor working on site who could perform many of these upgrades while they're doing the HVAC work. That would obviously minimize the downtime that the facilities would be closed. We wouldn't have to finish the work, reopen them, and then have another contractor come in and close the rooms again. Also, as we're working in several of these spaces, we are already demolishing ceilings. We're already putting in light fixtures. This way we don't have to install lights and install a ceiling, turn the room back over to them, only to have them come back and then replace those finishes that we just put in. So with that, I'll stand for questions and defer to anyone from TPAC as far as the upgrades that they have proposed for the facility.
So just a couple of points of clarification relative to the additional proposed CIP work. It would be our intent if this committee is interested in us proceeding, would be to have the contractor come up with hard cost estimates, and then because this exceeds $250,000, it would need to come back. Once we have those hard cost estimates, it needs to come back to this committee, and then it needs to go in front of the city council. But as part of it, we need to have the Part 2 application approved by the SHPO, because this is part of a qualified historic rehabilitation. And so that also would have a potential impact on the cost. So these are preliminary costs. So we would move forward, get hard costs, get the Part 2 application prepared, get it in front of the SHPO, which could be 60+ days to get that approval, because we cannot start any work until we get SHPO approval. Then once we have hard costs, then come back in front of this committee and the governing body for approval, because this is a capital item in the CIP over $250,000. Just want to make sure that we're all on the same page in what the process would need to be.
Well, I personally would like to see a hard cost. I'd like to see us do that. Because it makes sense. If we're going to tear it up once, let's tear it up and put it back together once. And to see how far we are from what you've proposed. So I have a few questions if you guys don't mind, Neil and okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'll start with mine. Thank you, Braxton, for bringing that up. The new, on page 3, the new VAV boxes throughout, what's VAV?
Variable air volume, which is
Okay.
basically the best way of controlling temperature, because
Okay.
it's not just temperature control, it's also the amount of air that you're putting into, that conditioned air that you're putting into that space.
Okay, just wanted to make sure there. What about, I know we're doing all this tearing up and we're getting ready, we're shutting down second floor. What are we gonna do with the ice machine? Where is our employees gonna get ice at?
So during the project, we are going to relocate that ice machine onto the first floor. So for the next few months, the ice machine will be inaccessible as they relocate it from the second floor to the first floor. Currently, our plan is to purchase ice and store it in the freezers that we still do have in the building so that our employees will have access to ice. And then when we reopen this fall, that will be located in a better location with the existing break rooms and vending machines that we have on the first floor of the building.
Okay, but Jason, aren't we shutting the first floor down too?
That's correct.
So
for the
is
next,
that why we're doing the ice to,
correct. So
Okay.
the ice machine was on the second floor. We're moving that to the first floor into an employee break room.
okay,
And let me just interject. There has been some wildly incorrect information that has been thrown around, and that is that City Hall first floor entrance was going to be closed for
I've heard that. That
for
was the
phase
next-
two. And that is incorrect. City Hall first floor entrance will remain open throughout the entire project. People that have appointments with probation, prosecution, or the clerk will need to check in with first floor security, and then they will be directed down to the secured areas for their meetings.
okay. And that was another question, okay. Looks like we cut some of the bushes and cleaned up the east side of TPAC.
That's correct. So we have
I-
a landscaping contractor come in and clean up and do some weed removal. When we get final design on the ramp, we'll know exactly if we have to make any changes to the landscaping on that side of the building.
Okay, okay. So I appreciate that, because it was looking pretty shabby. And then you said you've put more lighting on that side as well?
That's correct. So we have some temporary lighting that we installed along the pathway, which illuminates the area as you're walking down that ramp. And then as we install the permanent ramp, which we're proposing, the design would include some pedestrian lighting along that ramp, which we could bid out as an alternate.
Okay. So I want to talk about the stairs a little bit. I bet you don't understand why, but, so we're not looking to rip them all out and replace them. We're just looking at maybe replacing what we can and sealing what we can. And I realize those, even when they're wet, they're slippery. I get that. It just kind of concerns me with the hundreds of people that come in and out of there, and I know we can't detect that, but do we feel this is the best thing to do? Is that what you're saying to me?
So my recommendation would be that we approach the SHPO and we ask if we can come with a blended approach like we have on the City Hall side.
Okay,
So on the City Hall side, we still have the granite stair treads, but we have gone with the stamped concrete for that large landing area, which has greatly reduced the amount
Right.
of ongoing maintenance, and in my opinion, is still aesthetically acceptable, right? Much easier for us to maintain. I would like to go to the SHPO and say we would propose something similar in terms of, instead of having that limestone landing, go back with virtually a zero maintenance stamped concrete for the landing, but still retain those granite stair treads on both levels, up to the landing and then up to the top landing.
okay,
And you know, if you don't ask, you don't get, right? I
Right.
would like to have that conversation because, you know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Well, we didn't get anyone who was interested in bidding the work when we put it out to bid
is that probably why?
because of the complexity of it.
Okay, I know that, how bad do we really need a marquee? Is that just gonna light things up, or, I mean, how old is this, do we know?
I'll defer to our friends from
Original,
TPAC.
that would be a TPAC question.
Okay,
Hello, I'm Rory Kent. Well, thank you for letting me come up here. Thank you, everybody. I'm Rory Kent, serving as the Executive Director. With me, I have Blair, who's been here a little bit longer
Okay.
and knows a little bit more about the history of the marquee. But the first thing that's going to happen when we turn the lights on is it has lights on it. It's LED, which is going to make for more lights
Right.
at night when it's time to leave and our patrons leave to go home. Now they can see those steps a little bit better, and it looks better. That's what all of the I don't want to say all the other performing arts centers, but all the centers like ours and arenas, they all went digital. And it's easier too. So anyway, I'll let Blair give you a little bit more about the history of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Blair Adams, the Director of Event Services, and I have the luxury of being the local historian of TPAC. The original marquee, which is currently covered up by a vinyl banner, was a changeable letter marquee with plastic letters and a plastic face, which aside from a custom-made replacement, the changeable letter technology is obsolete and is not currently available. Upgrading to an LED marquee allows us to better sell the events coming up, also display more than one event at a time, and incorporate the use of video that might be more enticing. We can do a better job of welcoming patrons and conventions to the event. We just had a convention, it was a national convention that we had people coming from a 5-state area, and we weren't able to even put their name on the building.
They might not have seen it if the lights were out. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. Dave. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions?
Madam Chair.
Yep. Councilman Banks and Councilman Dobler.
Okay. I had only one question, and
That's
that
all
was
right.
about the steps. The comment, I may have a comment. It's really covered very well the information that you gave when Braxton said it was going to be extensive. Definitely a lot to take in for this body, and I thought that everything was covered real well. Only had one question about the steps. I don't know how we manage if we don't use some type of salt or something on the steps. That was the only question that I have, and Councilwoman Chair asked that question. So thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Dobler?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, back on the City Hall project, thanks for the update. Makes sense. It's behind schedule. I think everybody knew that, but there's good reasons. And I think when Municipal Auditorium was revamped, as well as, when that was revamped years ago, there was lots of asbestos and lots of abatement. So not surprising that that's occurring on the City Hall side as well. Tell me again, how much did we allocate per year for TPAC in the CIP?
I believe it's 350 a year for 5 years.
That's correct.
Okay, so this is a 5-year program for TPAC, correct?
Correct.
Okay. If I could maybe get representative of TPAC, I'm just curious of how, number one, how you arrived at these projects priority-wise, and then where does this put TPAC once these projects are completed? Because we've heard for years that there's lots of things that need to be done to TPAC. What does this get us, if you would, please? Thank you.
Hello once again. So downstairs at TPAC, we have, as he stated, very good. We have a situation where in the Hills room, it's a whole bunch of pillars like that, right? That's load bearing. We probably got 12 or 14 of them, and they split that big room that we have, which caused a lot of the weddings, parties, things of that magnitude that would normally come to us. They gone to other places that got a more open room concept. So on the other side of the hallway, which is the black box theater and the dance theater as well, it's a wall that's blocking it. By removing that wall, now we are up to date now. Now we have an open room that can cater to a wedding, to a small comedy show, small concerts, conventions, anything now. You know, the Hill room still would be utilized, but we also have another way that we can do it too, because we can't just knock the Hills room down because it's holding up the upstairs. So, so this is the workaround to make us relevant again, especially when we talking about getting some of the conventions to come to Topeka. Right now, we're just not competitive enough, to help. People come to us all the time, but when they do the walk around, that's just some of the stuff people ask us about. Actually, knocking that wall down was something that somebody asked me about, and I said, I don't know. And then when the CIP came around, I was like, oh, well, we can make that happen. Let's see if we can make it happen now. Because it'll make us, it'll put us in the fight now instead of waiting later. So I'm going to let Blair talk as well.
There's a lot of positive energy in Topeka right now, and we are attracting events from around the country that we haven't been able to attract before, and bringing TPAC's convention spaces into a more modern and more usable configuration allows us to continue to bring more events back to Topeka and new events to Topeka. I just mentioned that we just had a national dance convention. We actually host 5 of those a year, and we could actually host more, but we need more space and larger spaces. This actually helps us tremendously.
Let me rephrase the question. Maybe this is a joint answer. So the things I've heard about for a long time in regards to TPAC is some of the updating that we're talking about here, certainly the rooms downstairs, always concerns about heating and cooling and water pipes leaking and all kinds of things relevant to TPAC itself. By the time we're done with the City Hall project, TPAC, the project that the city's doing, plus the 5-year plan with the TPAC funding, where does that get us? Can anybody answer that question? What are we still going to be in need of to I don't know if relevant's the right word, but to continue to be competitive?
Well, the continued modernization, technology changing all the time, and having this infrastructure to do so, that's where this helps get us. We're, I guess, always going to be enticing new business to come to Topeka. And this gives us tools to do that, tools to continue doing that and to maintain the business that we currently have.
And to add to what Blair just said, it'll get us a long way as far as like at the end of the 5 years, we're going to be looking real good as far as being competitive, not just here in Topeka, but nationally, as Blair keep alluding to. So yeah, the money that you guys giving us, approved for us, is going to take us a long way. So now we can start focusing more on the programming side and not having to worry about if something's going to break while we are out looking for business. This put us directly in the game. So that's why we were so grateful for it. So thank you guys. But does that answer it?
That's good.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Anything else? Any more comments? I don't.
No,
he's good.
we need to come back to you with a resolution after we have gotten good firm cost estimates and we've gotten the SHPO's buy-in to come back with a resolution, because this will be over the $250,000 threshold.
Okay, our next meeting is July the 16th at 11 o'clock. We're right here, I believe. Is there anything else? If not, keep up the good work. Jason, thank you for that update. Thank you for all the headaches you've given everybody. It'll be worth it. It'll be worth it. And thank you for that clarification, because I thought we were going to go on the east side to enter to get, so I appreciate that. Okay, City Manager, you have anything to add?
Thank you for letting me attend your meetings. These are good meetings, important meetings, and TPAC I have a special appreciation for, so keep improving it.
Okay. Like your tie. All right. there's nothing else, this meeting's
And
adjourned.
let me know when you bring Liverpool back.
All right, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you.